Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, soldiers, dedicated, and Ashaman alike, welcome to another exciting episode of the Black Tower Podcast, a Wheel of Time podcast. I am Daniel.
And I am Andrew.
Today we are coming back to you with another book review. In fact, if you've been following along, you'll know that this is the last of the book reviews in the main series. But before we get to all of that, given that this is the last one, you want to toss some protection on there, Andrew?
Yeah. And there is a chance that Josh will be joining us. He's found himself busy with life at the moment, so he might chime in at some point in the future. He may not. No promises, no guarantees. It's a surprise.
A surprise guest, Josh.
But what isn't a surprise is how much we're going to spoil in this episode.
Oh man.
So, this obviously being the 14th book in what I always call the core series, which is almost an unnecessary distinction because there's only one book out that I would be technically out of the core series as a prequel. This episode contains spoilers up to and through book 14 of the Wheel of Time series, A Memory of Light.
Indeed.
If you have not finished A Memory of Light and therefore 99% likely completed the entire series, you are at risk of being spoiled. So if you're one of those, if you have not finished, recommend pausing here. Unless you don't care about spoilers, then by all means continue to listen. But if you do care about being spoiled, if you want to finish A Memory of Light, if you want to finish the series before finding out all the juicy details of how our epic story, it's not our epic story, the epic story we love,
Indeed.
written by Robert Jordan and Brandon Sanderson. I almost changed their names to Robert Sanderson and Brandon Jordan. But if you haven't finished it and you don't want to be spoiled, definitely put a pin in this episode. Come back later. You have even more time to finish the series than you did when you probably started it before the show comes out. Since
Indeed.
The show production is probably / has been halted temporarily because of the deadly coronavirus. Sad news, but also with a bit of a grain of salt, because I think I saw this comment I think I saw this on our Discord. Yeah, it's sad because we want to see the series as fast as we can, but also it does us no good if if anybody in the team contracts the virus and unfortunately would possibly pass away, which we don't want anybody to contract the virus or pass away, but be safe. Even while you're listening to this, you might be in your car, you might be at work. Go ahead and put on some hand sanitizer, rub it through all your hands, rub it through your hair, use it as hair gel, just put it on everything.
Don't do that.
Yeah, what's the worst that could happen? I mean, yeah, it'll probably dry out your hair because it's alcohol based, but hey, I would take gross hair over corona hair any day.
Well, why are you putting corona in your hair? That's even worse.
So, Bob 3 cubicles over sneezed in the air, all right? I'm just trying to survive and pay my mortgage, all right? If that means I got to put Germex in my hair as a temporary styling gel just to make sure I survive, then so be it.
Then that is the price I will pay.
There are no limits to what I will go through to defend my family.
So, by the way, just in case you were wondering, or in case you were Andrew, because we're talking about this, fun fact, hand sanitizer is an antibacterial. It's not actually useful against the coronavirus, as it's a virus.
There's a fair point. But washing your hands.
Yes, washing your hands is great. Washing your hands is 100% good. Do that, please. Wash your hair, wash your hands, wash your eyeballs.
Now, while
wash your butthole,
Germex and yeah, definitely wash your taint. But while Germex and other so-called antibacterials may be focused on bacterials, it has been scientifically proven that alcohol does stand a chance of killing the coronavirus as well as heat. So it can potentially aid you in your fights
Fair.
against the coronavirus because of the alcohol content.
Yes.
So don't
And so
drink it.
certainly I am
That's
not
what we have rum
saying
for.
don't use hand sanitizer at all.
Just
If
give
that
up.
makes you
Just
feel
don't.
better, great. Please do that. But
Toss out
wash
the
your hands.
Germex. All
Wash
hope
your
is
hands.
lost.
Wash
The end
hands.
is nigh.
Hands wash. Wash your taints, wash your hands, wash your face, wash your taint again, and then get out there. Or don't. Whatever it is that you're up
You
to.
should probably wash your face before you wash your taint, because even though you're washing, it's still just. But don't put Germex on your taint. That's gonna burn.
Yeah, no, that's 100% true.
Keep Germex away from sensitive areas. Rely on soap.
Yes, and water.
For you ladies out there, apparently avoid blue soap in your sensitive areas. It's one of the few things I learned. Apparently, when my ex and I were together and she was living with me, that was one of the things I learned, because I bought blue bars of soap to use, and she's like,
I
can use that mostly, but I can't use that everywhere. And I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, well, apparently blue, like bars of soap that use blue dye or something like that, are more likely to cause like yeast infections or something. I don't know. I could be remembering wrong. I don't know. That's what she said. It could have just been something she had going on. I don't know.
I'm allergic to blue dye, but only in my lady bits.
Yeah. I also had an ex that couldn't drink dark soda because it caused her to break out with acne.
Huh.
So I just meet a lot of, I don't want to say weird people, but people with unique attributes.
Yeah, there we go. People with unique attributes. Unique people. I like that.
But it's fitting that we delved into my memories of my exes, because we were talking about memories. Memories of memories, because as this episode is entitled, Memories of Memories, I was almost said Rand. I almost confused you for your brother. Daniel and I, as well as Josh.
Oh, good. We get that a lot.
We have finished the series, so going through these book reviews 90% of the time is a lot of us remembering what happened and going through what happened again, and that kind of stuff. So,
very true.
Which is really good. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. We did an episode as guest on the Will Reads podcast.
Correct.
This past Tuesday.
That was super fun.
What day was that? The 10th. Which I was late for because of family stuff. Because my family sees ghosts and or strangers roaming the yard, and instead of calling the cops, they call me.
I mean, it seems like an appropriate response. Most of the time when I see a ghost, I call you as well.
Yeah. That's the strange number that keeps calling my phone and just breathing. I can see them. They're still here. But
you'd think by now you'd recognize my voice.
You would think, but whenever you're in a panic because you just saw a ghost, you sound a little different. But that's why I was late to that guest episode.
Andrew, they're here again. I see them.
Do you see dead people?
Bruce Willis is dead. I see him.
He doesn't know it. He doesn't know it yet.
Oh, God. And for all of those of you who are watching or are listening to this podcast and haven't yet seen The Sixth Sense, you're welcome. Bruce Willis is dead the whole time.
Go see Ghost and then watch The Sixth Sense. You need to see the pottery scene from Ghost first.
Yes.
Which is a hilarious segue into the Pacifier movie, because Vin Diesel is convinced that he has found the ghost, and it's really just a literal DVD pirated version of the movie Ghost, because he puts it in and it starts playing, and for some reason on our DVD it picks up with the pottery scene, because that's the most recognizable scene from Ghost. Anyway.
Yes, it is.
I digress.
Where the verb ghosting comes from. Actually, sorry, not ghosting. Not in the modern sense. It was actually a thing before that. Like, now ghosting is a totally different thing. But ghosting used to be for at least a while after the movie came out, when you would come up behind your significant other and like put your hands on their hands and do whatever they were doing. It didn't even need to be pottery. It was just like, oh, well, I'm going to be intimate with you. Not like that kind of intimate, but intimate with you. And we'll do this thing together. But now it's just modern. And now it's ghosted me and it's disappeared.
Anybody ever ask me now, like, are you ghosting me? I feel like somebody's ghosting me. I'm just gonna send them like a gif of freaking Patrick Swayze
Schways?
assisting assisting them in molding a clay vase.
Schwazy?
Yeah.
But
Oh, Mr. Swayze.
that is not what this episode is about. I mean, it is
Could be.
because tangents and we like them and they're fun. But technically, that is not what this episode is about. But before we get to the actual meat and potatoes of A Memory of Light, would you like to hit the people with some fun facts and statistics?
Oh, sure, always. This was some of my favorite parts of the book review. So, A Memory of Light was originally due for publication in late 2012. However, it was delayed until January 8th of 2013. There were 4 excerpts from the book released on Tor.com preceding the release of the full book. An excerpt of the prologue was released on April 26th of 2012. An excerpt of chapter 1 on July 15th, which was actually my birthday. It was a fantastic birthday present.
Nice.
An excerpt from chapter 11 on September 2nd of 2012, and an excerpt from chapter 3 on December 30th of 2012. It was announced that the prologue of the book will be released as an ebook on October 2nd, 2012, but because it was accidentally released in some regions rather, it was released early on September 19th of 2012. On September 26th of 2012, the full text of chapter 1 was released on Tor.com. And on October 24th, 2012, the audio version of chapter 2 was released on Tor.com.
And then on November something of 2012, we all died because Mayans.
I remember seeing billboards in my city for that.
Yep.
It was ridiculous.
I believe it.
So, into the POVs. So, the statistics become very interesting when you look at the percentage of POVs versus their percentage of the word count. So, when you look at percentage of POVs, Rand has the most at 14.34%. But when you look at words, Matt has the most. So Matt only has 9.69% of the POVs, but he has 11.82% of the word count at 42,597 words out of Memory of Light, where Rand has 40,834. Egwene comes in third with 7.75% of the POV sections, but 38,533 words, which is 10.69% of the entire book. Perrin has the same percentage of POVs, but only has 9.15% of the word count at 32,990. Elaine is next with almost 7% of the word count, followed by Avienda, who has 5.8%. Then Lan, we get our fantastic musical muse buddy Andral Genhold coming in next at 4.37% of the word count. Other notable characters that get POVs, we get some from Tamons, Bael, Galwin, Min. Oliver gets some Galad, Tam, Logan Ablar, Mogideon, Rodal Iterade, Fortuona, who we know is Tuon. Loyal gets some. He gets about 0.77% of the word count, but almost 2% of the POVs. Gareth Bryn is in there. Suon, she gets about 0.77% of the POVs or 0.63% of the word count. Finally get some Demondred, or I will say finally, we've gotten him before, but we get some Demondred, some Uno, some Nynaeve, who only gets 1.55% of the POVs and 0.5% of the word count. We get Berlane, we get Tom, we get Ruark, we get Brigitte, our boy Masdrom Taim, who is no longer our boy for sure at this point. Leanne Sharif gets some, Cad Swain, Gall is still hanging around, Jura Grady. We get to see our favorite hunters, or trackers, whatever you want to call them, and Julian, Sandar, and Huron. Moraine gets about 0.77% of the POVs, and she gets about 0.09% of the word count. And then, of course, we get our quote. It's crazy how some of the super influential characters get very few words. Moraine only gets 342. Cat Swain gets 946. Taim gets 1,134. Uh, Things like that. Mogideon gets almost 4,000 words. It's very interesting to see the breakdown and the difference in statistics, because Rand has 36 different POVs in this book versus Matt's 26. But Matt has just under 2,000 words more than him. And that creates a huge statistical difference in terms of POVs, because Rand gets 10 more POVs, but they're obviously shorter POVs than Matt's is, because Matt comes out on top with the overall word count, making him the most talkative and most talked about character in A Memory of Light in terms of statistical word count.
Indeed. Yeah, it's always interesting a little bit, because when it comes right down to it, the influential characters are influential regardless. Like, I know that you know that, but at the same time, like, they get talked about regularly by other people. And so even though, like, Rand is talking about, or is saying things or thinking things 36 times, you know that a lot of what he's saying or thinking is about other people.
I
But
mean,
it is weird, or it is, like, interesting to look at and think about the fact that you get very little of the last book from Moraine's perspective, for example.
it becomes kind of hard in this book to break down and figure out who, because it's easy to say there's a lot of influential characters in a scene, but then you come all the way down to chapter 37, the last battle, a chapter that is over 200 pages in length, that in word count alone is longer than Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, and it's literally got every character in it.
Just about.
And just about every character, but every main character is in it. There's lesser characters in it. Ela's in it. Oliver's in it. Leanne's in it. Berlin's in it. Which they're not as much lesser characters, but Tam is in it. Vara is in it. Sylvina Brion is in it. Uno is in it. I mean, there's characters that, based off of their history, you wouldn't necessarily expect them to be in it, but you wouldn't say they wouldn't be in it.
Sure.
But it's an interesting chapter. I mean, it starts with Lan, and then goes into Elaine, and there's a
Wait,
ton of
Lan gets in Elaine?
no
I don't think
Lan.
I really feel like Rand's gonna have something to say about that.
I mean, could he really beat Lan?
I mean,
I
yes.
mean, Nynaeve could, but I don't. I mean, yeah, technically Rand could for sure, but I don't.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Moraine would do her best. Nynaeve would do her best, because both of them care about Rand. Or, sorry, care about Lan, but neither of them would actually be able to take Rand. Not in a power fight.
Gerard Argana gets some POV in the last battle chapter. He's of course the first captain of the Geldian forces. It's just a very, very long chapter, very befitting of the ultimate climax of.
I think I actually do climax every time I read this chapter.
It's a really good chapter. I mean, it's one of those that it's like, it fits the meme perfectly. Like when you're reading a book and you're ready to go to bed, and you finish a chapter and you're like, oh, just one more, and it winds up being the last battle chapter.
Yeah, it's not going to
You're
go
not,
on that long.
yeah. like you're not sleeping tonight. I'm trying to see like, who gets the shortest POV, and I think it is. So in terms of overall characters that get the shortest POV, Oliver has a 69 word. Well, no,
Giggity.
because he has more in that. So when you look at,
Wait, he
at
has a 69 POV.
well, he has one POV that's only 69 words, but before that he has one that's 845, and before that one that's almost 3,000. Um, so when you look at not by character but by individual POV, the character with the shortest POV in the last battle is actually Rand. He has one that only comes in at 60 words. The second
Well,
to last POV of the chapter.
and of course, not getting into too much of it, because I'm sure that we'll cover a number of these other things. That kind of makes sense, since Rand isn't really in the last battle. I mean, he is, because his battle is the one that overall, like, ends everything. But at the same
Yeah.
time, he's not actually part of what we consider sort of the last battle.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, in chapter 39, he literally has a POV that's only 21 words. We'll get into what all of that means. But the statistics for me are always super exciting. I don't know. Well, I don't want to say super exciting, but it's really informative to just look at who gets, there's so many different characters, and when you look at who gets what percentage of it, a lot of them had to come down to hard cuts and decisions made by at this point, of course, Brandon Sanderson of, who do we need to hear from, who's going to be here, what do we cut, where do we cut, and who knows, some characters may be at the word count that they are simply by stroke of luck, that words or sentences or scenes written about them could have been done away with in the editing process for sure.
Sure.
But to break away from the numbers game,
Come
it would
break away,
probably
come break away,
behoove of us
break
to
away.
actually talk about what happens in a memory of light. So prior to this is everything in the Wheel of Time. Obviously. I mean, this is supposed to be the book where anything that's left unresolved, which really isn't much after the last book,
Yes.
after book 13. There's really, book 13 was the main, let's resolve pretty much all the storylines. Let's get everything where it needs to be and set up, because the last battle is nigh. And we talked about this in our book review of Towers of Midnight, that we believe, or at least I believe, that the reader was meant to feel a sort of rushed feeling that, okay, you guys, because of all your intersquabbling and all this other bullshit and meddling by the Dark One and his forces and just natural Wheel of Time character inability to communicate, you've wasted a bunch of time on getting ready for the inevitability for the big thing that's going to happen. Because what's, a disorganized force is easier to fight than anything else. And by the end of Towers of Midnight, it looks like everything is working towards creating or setting the stage for there to be an organized military to be ready and to be staged to fight the Dark One and his forces. And that's kind of the cliffhanger that's left by Towers of Midnight. So we start into a memory of light.
Yes. No, and I think that is one of the best ways to put it, is that this is sort of a very well written, in a lot of ways, chapter, book in the story, because one of the things that I really like when authors do this is the idea that the book is written in a way that is exactly how the reader should feel about it, because it's not just the events, it's not just what's happening, it's not just what people feel about it, because you can say, oh, Rand feels this way about this stuff, and oh, they're just getting things together, and they're really kind of being like, crap, how we've talked about the entire time that we don't have enough time to do stuff? Well, we don't have any more time, we're done, we're absolutely at the precipice here. And Brandon Sanderson does a really good job of actually making the reader go there with them, not only just in Rand felt this way, blah, 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 but like actually you as a reader are like, oh my God, things are happening. Oh my God, I need to get through this book. I need to get through the next book. Like, oh my God, things are happening. And so I think that
It's all
personally,
coming at me so fast. I
right?
can't stop it all.
Right?
It's like you've seen Deadpool 2, right?
Yes.
So you remember in the Wolverine movie when you saw Wade Wilson, he was able to use his katanas and deflect every bullet.
Yes.
So they make fun of that when Cable's shooting at him and he tries to deflect them all and he's working, and then they all just start going through. Bullets are moving so fast. It's kind of like that. You're like, shit's coming at me so fast. Yeah, you can't absorb it all necessarily like in the moment. Like it takes going back or thinking about it, stopping, thinking about it, taking notes or rereading. Like we've said many a times, rereading these books, there's so much you don't pick up from the start, and you wouldn't necessarily, um, unless you were like hinted at that you need to pick up on stuff, that there's a lot of early stuff, or you're just inherently skeptical, like Ian and Chris are over at the Will Reads. Which couldn't say it there, but because this is completely spoiler and everybody's been warned, I can say it here. They've made a lot of fucking guesses that are fucking spot on. They've
No,
made a
it's
lot of
totally
guesses that are
true.
way the fucking left field, but they've made a lot of guesses that are fucking spot on. And to me, that's super exciting. And that only happens when somebody comes into it and they're being guided by somebody that's read the series, that asked them the thought provoking questions, and they're looking at it from a super critical standpoint.
Yes.
So we know Chris and Ian aren't listening, but Alan, you might be
Good
listening,
job,
and
buddy.
fucking shout out. Loved it. Couldn't say it whenever we were on, when we were guests for you. Can say it now because this is our podcast and we do what we want, but also because everything's spoiled and Ian and Chris shouldn't be listening. And if you are right now, bad.
Stop.
Unless this is like in the
Fuck
future
out
and
of
you
here.
finish, then thank you. But if you
Yes.
haven't finished, bad. Bad Chris, bad Ian. But you go back and you read through and you start drawing all these connections. But whenever you read through the first time, which is an experience that I see us all the time, and I know you do too, because a lot of people talking on Twitter, when we see somebody tweet out, just finished book 4, just finished book 7, just finished, I'm about to read A Memory of Twilight. Memory of Twilight? What the fuck?
Yeah,
Memory of
I
Light.
heard that, and I was gonna let it go just because you had a
No,
long day. But like, also, I was like,
every day is a long day.
don't you do that to this? Don't you do that to this? This series.
I feel so bad. I'm gonna edit that out for sure. Probably not. I'm gonna leave it, but all that kind of stuff. And on your first read through, like you wish, it's a feeling you can never get back, and it's an
Correct.
experience you can never get back.
It's
Which is
like
why I
you
like,
losing your virginity.
yeah, it's
You're
like you
really
see
glad
people.
that it happened, but also you're like, man, I never get to do that again.
I wish I could redo mine. Anyway, um, it's one of those things like you see people reading
You
this, and
and
you're like, oh,
literally
come on.
everyone else, by the way, but brother.
I don't know. Some people have got some really good first time stories. Mine was just not. Anyway, it's one of those things that it's like you see people reading it through, and part of you wants to sit there and be like, hurry up, get to it, get to the end, finish it so we can talk about everything. But another part of you is like, no,
No.
read it slowly, savor it, because it'll never be the same for you again.
Well, and to be fair, this was actually one of the moments where I really started to understand, because I mean, like, obviously everybody has this happen. There's always your parents and or your grandparents and or other authority figures in your life are always, when you're a kid, they're like, savor this time, you can't get it back, you can't be a kid again, you can't blah blah blah, and you're like, no, fucking grow up so I can drink beer and vote and do other things that I'm not allowed to do right now, and have a job and be taken seriously and all of that different stuff. And they're always like, no, take your time. And
Like a quintessential example of the grass is always greener on the other side. Like,
little
you
bit.
spend your entire childhood working towards becoming a functioning, or trying to be a functioning adult, and then you start getting bills and stuff, and you're like, "This fucking sucks." No
Like,
wonder
whoa,
my
whoa,
parents
whoa,
were
whoa,
always
whoa.
so angry at me. Like,
Whoa.
can I just go back?
Stop this. What?
Yeah.
Stop.
And it's
No,
amazing, like, it seems like every generation hits that point at an earlier age. Well, no, it might be kind of at a later stage, depending on
yeah,
how
I
you look at it.
feel like most of the time it's actually a slightly later stage, at least in our current sort of like societal trajectory.
I
We
don't know.
are sort of
I hit it definitely
extending
at
that,
18. When I started college, I hit that point. I was like, this fucking sucks. Like,
right?
I don't want to be here. I don't want to do this. Fucking college sucks, but it was also so great. So like I look back now, actually I sent an email to my old JROTC instructor, who apparently still runs the program. And I was like, "Hey, uh I'm just curious to see how the program's going. Can I come and visit? Because it's, you can't just walk up into schools and anything, because that's just fucking weird."
Correct.
Um, but you look back on all this stuff and you're like, man,
Unless you're
I
a
wish I
teacher,
could.
then just walk up into school because that's
I mean,
normal.
yeah, if you're a teacher, then yeah, or a student, yeah, go for it. But if you're like an alumni,
Yeah,
that can be kind of creepy, at least for like high school and below in the American education system.
correct.
But it's like looking back, you're like, man, I wish I had savored this so much more because I powered through the series until I got to a point where I was waiting for books to be released. And then when they were, I was fortunate enough to where I was kind of out of the loop after 11. And then one day I came back into the loop and the last three books were ready.
Nice.
And I powered through all three. Like within a week and a half, 2 weeks, I had bought all three books on Google Books and I read through them. Now, that being said, I had a job that allowed me to sit in the fucking truck for 12 hours at a time doing nothing but reading.
And that does
And so
help.
that, yeah, and so that's what I would do, and I powered through it because I was like, I need to know how this finishes. I need to know how this ends. And looking back, I would tell myself take more time, enjoy the series more, but because of the pace I read at, I don't think I could.
Right. No,
Um,
I had very similar experience, which granted, I mean, like, I do think there is something to the fact that the second time that I read it, I did actually feel like I took in so much more because I did actually slow it down, and really took a little bit more time with it and really let myself enjoy it more. But the first time that I read it, I did exactly the same thing, or not exactly the same thing, because I was actually reading them book by book at that point, where I was reading the book and then waiting for the next one to come out, and then reading the book and then waiting for the next one to come out. But again, I just remember, especially because this was also, uh, if I'm remembering correctly, the last few books came out around the same time that the first few Harry Potter books came out. Am I getting that wrong? Is my timeline way off? I don't know. But me and my sister were both reading A Wheel of Time, and my whole family was reading Harry Potter. And so, like, there was this kind of like understanding in the way that I was reading books, just in general, that were exciting books because they were new, in like all right, cool, well, I get to read it for a certain amount of time, and then somebody else gets to read it for a certain amount of time, and then somebody else gets to read it for a certain amount of time, or like they get to read it first and then you get to read it next. But there was always like this very much hurry up and go mentality that I had with the books, and so when we got to A Memory of Light, I remember just, well, when we got to Towers of Midnight, I just powered through the whole thing. And then just kind of like sat on my hands for a while waiting for the last one to come out because I had that sense of urgency. I had that like shit is going down feeling. And then I didn't get the next one right away. And so by the time A Memory of Light came out, I was just like, cool, I'm going to read this in like 3 days. So I just ended up not even really like chewing on the things that I was reading. And then, as I said, I did get a chance to go back, and read it, a second time. Obviously, again, once you own the book, you can read it a billion times. And I did take more time with it the second and third times that I read through, the book itself as well as the whole series and everything like that. So, but man, I 100% felt what um Brandon Sanderson was trying to do with that sense of no, this needs to happen immediately.
Oh yeah, I mean, and it's really good, and I think it makes the last book so great, and it does a lot of things. When you have that kind of rushed ending, that kind of let's finish off all this, and it basically tells the reader like, look, the only really thing we have left to deal with is this last battle, this thing that the entire series has been building up to. It creates that desire, that anticipation, and it definitely influenced. Not that sales or numbers are all that matters.
Certainly.
But the reality of being published authors is you can write the most amazing story, but
And if no one reads
if
it,
if no one reads it or it doesn't sell, then you just wrote a good story for you and your children or whoever's exposed to it to enjoy. You can wind up with very niche things, which is why it's kind of comforting that things like indie classics or cult classic films are such a big thing. Things like Donnie Darko, which is obviously a very popular cult classic film, but things like that they don't have the amazingly huge fan base, even though Donnie Darko does. Um, Fucking Rabbit Mask still slightly terrifies me.
it's a terrifying rabbit mask.
Yeah, I mean, it is a fucking fantastic movie. If you haven't watched Donnie Darko, and that will not be the movie quote for this episode, so that's not like a cheating thing for you guys, as much as I might want it to be now. Go watch Donnie Darko. It's a really good thing, and then look up the Donnie Darko theories. It's so good, but that definitely helped, and that's something that the second to last book of any series really should help do. Is help encourage and entice readers to just be so adamant about getting that last book. And I think that was part of the deciding factor is why even Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows got divided into two books. Um, yes, there was a
Two
ton of
movies.
story left. Two movies. Yeah, you're right. It was
Yeah,
one book.
it was one book.
I think that's why it got divided into two movies.
Yes.
Because you had all that enticement and all that excitement coming into the Deathly Hallows, because the one right before it was what, the Half Blood Prince?
Correct.
So you had all this at the end, so finally the guy you don't like the entire book series goes over to the dark side and you dare use my own spells against me, Potter. And you're like, well, I got to see this guy, get his just desserts. And if you read the book all the way through, of course you get it all at one time, but then the movies come out, which are an example of how good how much justice movies can do a book.
Yes.
Even with not including a lot of the details. And that being said, there's nothing saying, because J.K. Rowling was still writing the last couple books, and they were still in their editing and production or publishing phases when the first couple movies were coming out.
Correct.
So she could have been very conscious of writing the books in a way that was conducive to turning into movies as well.
No, she's actually even come out in interviews and said that is something that she really started to take into account, and that it simultaneously like made her a better writer to think of them in some ways as movies, just because she had the benefit of seeing what her words, because I mean, like, everybody has plenty of movies or television shows that have been inspired by or have come directly from books. And so you do get a certain sense of, and this is obviously very apropos to this series, for example, everyone sort of has an idea of what that looks like, of seeing, okay, cool, well, this is a movie that's based on a book, and these are some of the things that are happening that are, correlations or differences or whatever between the written word and the screen story. But there is actually something really different, and I absolutely don't have this experience personally, but I believe the shit out of J.K. Rowling when she says actually seeing what your words look like on screen gives you a way better understanding of A, how people are perceiving your series in the first place, and B, what it's actually going to look like when it moves into other mediums. And so she definitely says that she was uh, definitely influenced by seeing her books be turned into movies, because they actually allowed her a lot more understanding of the visuals that people were getting from her words.
Yep. But before we get into the meat and potatoes that we said we earlier we're going to get into for the book, we have some shout outs to do.
Yes.
So, you guys know we have a Patreon. If you don't know we have a Patreon, congratulations, you found out now. We have a Patreon.
What's
Patreon.com forward
Patreon?
slash Black Tower Pod. It is a
Stop,
site that
stop,
you can go
stop.
to.
I
Oh,
don't
okay.
actually want you. No.
Oh, well,
Don't tell people. If
gonna
they
go
don't know,
cry
they
in the
don't know.
corner. Yeah, it's a secret. Go to patreon.com forward slash Black Tower Pod to find out. But we do have two Patreons that need their in episode shout outs
Indeed.
because they are amazing. So we have one Patreon who has subscribed at the highest tier, at the Quendiar Ashaman tier, and that is our very own Jack of the Shadows.
Damn, Jack.
Major thanks to you, Jack. We do enjoy dancing with you, just like Matt does. Very active in our Discord, very active on Twitter. We've talked about Jack probably 1,000 times in our episodes since he's been around. Uh, Fantastic guy, amazing guy. Not just for the support that you're giving us and the help that you're giving us. Fantastic, and we love you for it.
Yes.
Um, the second one is actually a promotion. Person has been promoted from soldier to dedicated. And
Yeah.
this
Get your
person is
sword
the
pin.
fantastic, obviously talented and Sidene coming along. This is the illustrious Dragon Reader, who is now a dedicated tier supporter, dedicated ranked member of the Black Tower. And again, we cannot thank you guys enough for your absolutely outstanding, fantastic support at the Black Tower of the Black Tower podcast. It is not taken for granted. It is incredibly, incredibly appreciated. And
Agreed.
we know this is a little delayed getting your shout outs there, but we had some guest episodes going on where it just didn't fit with the guest episode, which isn't necessarily a deterrent in the future. It's kind of how things work, but you're getting your shout outs now. Any other shout outs that you were supposed to get have already happened.
Yay.
And if you would like, you can go to that patreon.com forward slash Black Tower Pod and see what it takes for you to get your own shout out in an episode. We do shout outs on Twitter, we do shout outs on Instagram, as well as all of our Patreons, even at the soldier tier, or what you might call the $1 tier. You get access to our pre-recording stuff. Sometimes it's funny, sometimes it's annoying, sometimes it is all kinds of different things at any point in time.
Basically, if you imagine that our episodes are a train that is on a set of tracks because they have a theme, uh, and regularly we will get off topic and just train hobos, just jump off of that train, go and check out the local scene, and then come back. We do still technically have a train and tracks. Now imagine if there weren't tracks and we're just basically a D&D group of murder hobos running around doing whatever we want in any way, shape, or form. That is what the pre-recording is.
Yep. And if you think our actual episodes are uncensored or unfiltered, check out the pre-recordings. Some of them will make you reconsider what, at least in terms of the Black Tower podcast, unfiltered means. But thank
Unfiltered.
you guys. Thank you to all of our fantastic, lovely patrons. You guys go above and beyond to help support what we do here at the Black Tower podcast, and we love you and thank you so much for it.
Yes.
But into a memory of light, the thing the episode is about, the thing we should be talking about, and finally getting into. It's a bit bittersweet because it is the last book of the main series, the core series. If you read things in chronological order, it doesn't matter. It's the last book of the series. So why don't we get in and talk about it, Daniel?
Wait, do you read things in chronological order? Is that why Harry Potter was so hard to follow, and yet Memento was really easy to follow?
To be fair, at this point, I still have not read New Spring, so.
Wow. Well, in that case, ladies and gentlemen, guess who has homework?
I definitely do. Because the next book review is, of course, New Spring. It's the only book left.
No.
But right now,
after that, we have to go ahead and do the book review of the
Big White Book of Bad Art
Companion.
Oh no, we have to do the Big White Book of Bad Art first because it came out first.
Okay.
That's why it's so bad.
Fair.
And then they came out with the companion that actually got stuff right. Which is hilarious because in the Big White Book of Bad Art, the flag of Valdara, it's the green and blue stripe with the hand and the sword. It's the one that is...
It's Rodel Iteralde. And I don't remember. I'm totally blanking on where Rodel is from.
It is. I don't think it's Evdar. It is Damani.
Eridoman.
Yes. It is the flag that even on the wiki is displayed incorrectly. Because they show the hand grasping the sword by the hilt when in the description it is clearly grasped by the blade upside down.
Firmly grasp it.
Firmly grasp it! Which, I know I've said this before, is one of the main things I pointed out to Cave Geek Art. So, if you were one of those lucky people to get one of Cave Geek Art's reproductions of the Wheel of Time map, your Damani flag is accurate to the text from the books as well as the Wheel of Time companion, and you can personally thank me in the form of sharing the episode to your friends and family so that they can be as horrified as you are at Thanksgiving at what they've heard.
Yeah.
So that is probably like my proudest Wheel of Time fan moment, is someone that made a primitive style map of the Wheel of Time landscape in terms of the main story arc area. I came into the stream as he had finished it, and I was like, that's wrong. And he's like, what do you mean it's wrong? And I'm like, here's how it's described. And it got him to get in contact with the Team Jordan editor. And after going through it, he was like, I came into his stream later as he was redoing. He was like, yeah, so I got in contact with the editor to make sure. And he's like, you're absolutely right. He's like, all the images online are wrong. Correct. Everything's wrong. He's like, now I'm not sure about any of the flags. And I'm like, I'll try to let you know as much as I can. Obviously, I'm not a full expert or any kind of expert. I was really happy with that. Not because like I was like, oh, I'm wrong, I'm right, and you're wrong. It was a keeping things true to the series triumphant moment that I feel is a success for the entire Wheel of Time community to enjoy.
Yes.
But it's still kind of like one of my hallmarks to fame.
And speaking of
it goes on my resume.
Quotes, it's not about I'm right, you're wrong, I'm big, you're little, I'm smart, you're dumb, and there's nothing you can do about it. There's your movie quote for this week.
Yep.
I don't think Andrew knows this.
There it is. I don't. I can tell you I don't. And I'm scared to Google, I'm big, you're small, or something like that.
Yeah, do the whole thing if you're going to do it.
But, so there was your movie quote. With the movie quote out of the way, Let's finally, for the fifth time we've said this, get into the sustenance that makes up a memory of light.
Indeed.
I'm letting you take the reins from the start there, boss
I
man.
see. Okay, well, in that case, things are going to change around here.
whoa,
So yeah,
whoa! Just for this episode,
as
just
we
for
said
this overview.
before, Towers of Midnight leaves everything kind of a lot of things closed. Really, all that's happening is, or really that's sort of expected to happen, is the last battle. The Dark One is ready. The forces of the light are ready, and we're all kind of chilling in the calm before the storm. And that's exactly where A Memory of Light picks up. The armies of the Westland have assembled in preparation for Tarmangaiden, as have the forces of the Shadow. Demandred is the leader of the armies of the Shadow, even though technically Moradin has been given dominion over them as Nabliss. But Demandred starts by sending a smallish, I mean, like big enough to be problematic, and in this case, very problematic, but not his full force of a fighting force at Camelin, specifically in order to get what are called the Dragons, which are a joint venture by Matt, Elaine, and Aludra. Aludra being Matt's Illuminator friend, who was more than a friend for a bit.
It's the big boomsticks.
Yes, the big boomsticks. And he wants them because big boomsticks, and they're fun. And he has not been able to figure out how to recreate them. And so he wants to, Demandred, definitely wants to get a hold of one at the very least, and use it in the offensive. So it is the attack itself is thwarted because it does not actually get its goal, because they are actually capable. Talmanes, Matt, and a number of other people, though it's mainly men from the Band of the Red Hand, are able to stop them from doing what they want to do, but unfortunately Camelin is lost, which is kind of significant at this point because Camelin is a seat of power and a big one. Now, at this point, everybody knows that Tarmangaiden is upon them, and so they are flocking from everyone to the place where the battle is going to be held, which is the Fields of Marilor. And they are being bolstered every day, but let's be honest, the Shadow is also doing that as well. Because you can imagine that every day more Trollocs and Fades and Dragcar and all of the other ones that we've already talked about in other episodes are being made and whatnot. The Forsaken are down a number of people, as you well may know. And so to sort of bolster their ranks, Mazrim Taim, who is been revealed to be the biggest of dicks, is actually a new Forsaken. He is a new Dreadlord. And he has been given a new name by the Shadow, so he is known as Mahail, which, I mean, he's technically been known as through most of the book, but now it's just his name instead of a title. And another Forsaken that we thought was off of the rolls has come back. She is super incredibly ugly. Her name is Hassalam. And as those of you who are familiar with her deeds and whatnot, you won't be surprised to find out that she is Grandal brought back. So that all happens in the prologue. This is all stuff that happens before the events of the book even start. But when they do, we pop into the Fields of Marilor, where everyone is gathering. And Rand is holding a meeting. He wants to go ahead and get everybody in the Westlands to fight in the last battle. Even though, let's be honest, that was never actually a realistic goal, because
Well, we
Fucking
remember what
some people
started this, right?
stupid.
In
The
Towers of
dragon's
Midnight,
piece.
Rand. Yeah, well, what starts this is in Towers of Midnight. Rand goes to Elaine, not Elaine, Egwene, who is the Amerlin of the now unified White Tower,
Yes.
and says, I'm going to break all the seals. If you want to talk about this, we can talk about it in the field of Marilor. And
And
Egwene
then fucks
says,
right off.
yeah, and he just fucking leaves. He pops in. He's like, I'm going to break all the seals. If you want to talk about it more, meet me here. Meet me behind the bleachers at 5 p.m. Um,
All right,
and
Bill
uh,
Clinton. Or wait, no, that was definitely
whoa,
Bush. Sorry, that was
whoa.
definitely Bush.
Yeah, and his cheerleading days.
Yeah, meet me behind the
Um,
bleachers at 5 o'clock. I'm
we're
gonna
gonna take
break all
care
the
of Katrina
seals.
and Kata. um,
I'm
and
gonna let Osama bin Laden out of the seals.
And then Egwene, doing what she thinks is best, contacts all the nation leaders that she can and says, "Look, we all need to be here at this meeting because the savior of mankind has lost his fucking marbles, and we need to convince him that this is a bad fucking idea. So why don't y'all all come here?" Which nobody talks about a date; they just say meet there,
Well,
and
it's
they all
just
happen to
as
be there.
fast as humanly possible.
Yeah, and they all get there to talk. And this is what leads into.
Well, and I love how, like, to be completely honest, on some level, that was intentional. Like, Rand did that on purpose. He wasn't just like, hey, Egwene, I'm gonna do this thing. He's like, hey, Amerlin Seat, who can get in touch with everybody really quickly, and they'll all listen to you. I'm gonna do this thing. And then she, like, goes out to all of the leaders or, sends Aes Sedai and whatnot, and is just like, get everyone. And he's sitting there behind the bleachers at like 4:30 being like, excellent, excellent. Because of course there are definitely some people who are very much still afraid of or distrusting of and whatnot the Dragon Reborn. And I think that Rand really does realize that overall the more trustworthy and well-known entity in the world is the Amerlin Seed. So if anybody's going to be able to get all these nations together, it's going to be Egwene. Also, she's just such a force of will that I think even if she wasn't Amerlin, she'd be like, y'all be here. And they'd go.
Yeah, I mean, she has this, at this point in the story, she has this amazing mixture of just inherent leadership and manipulative political abilities, as well as the humility that she gained from the IL and being a captive of the Shan-Chan, that she's, at this point, a very well-rounded and very well-versed and earthly character, that she understands what is needed to convince the other cultures of the world to come and do this. She quickly identifies, for the last many, many thousand years, it's been, since the breaking of the world, essentially, or almost exactly, it's been these seals that have kept the Dark One away, and that's what they're trying to do, keep the Dark One away. And a lot of people have it in their mind, for sure, that if the Dark One is breaking loose, that all that needs to be done is the seals need to be repaired, not destroyed.
Right.
And they're kind of coming at it. I forgot the Chinese or Japanese term for it, but they would take broken pottery and they would repair it with powdered gold and resin to highlight the faults in it. And they're like, they're kind of thinking along those lines. Where Rand is like,
no, we need to do.
The Great Fires of Chicago. The Great Fires of Chicago have started. We need to tear everything down and build back on the ashes.
Yes.
And Egwene is buying into the more we need to fix what's here instead of destroying what's here and starting over. Because destroying what's here and starting over exposes the world to danger, right?
Yes.
You want to maximize your chance of success.
Well, and of course, on one hand, you
absolutely
understand Egwene's point, and what a number of people are thinking is at the very least, in my entire lifetime, my entire parents' lifetimes, many generations back, the prison on the Dark One has been successful. Why would we throw all of that away for this, chance at something else when it has been good enough? And Rand sort of having a certain amount more clarity and really going ahead and being like, no, 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 I can do this, is like, stop. It hasn't been good enough. It's actually
Stop.
been really bad. It has not been sufficient for so many years. And at the very least, we are talking about right now, where I think at this point, 4 of the 7 seals are broken and there are only 3 left.
Stop. Wait a minute. Fill my cup, pour some liquor in
Take a sip, sign a check. Perrin, get to stretch.
it.
Travel
Your
to
hammer's too
Eberdar,
hot. Hot damn.
Eridaman, all the way over there in Shara. If we show up, we gonna show out. Smoother than the scales on a golem. I don't know.
Close enough. But so she sends out this word, and everybody's like, "All right, let's gather here." And everybody's starting to gather. They're bringing their full armies.
Yes.
Because not only are they responding to the call of the Amerlin seat, but the world and the people can sense that the end is nigh.
Imagine
Meanwhile,
all the people knowing it's all fucked. Tarmageddon. Yeah.
who is the guy that does that amazing cover of it on America's Got Talent? Chris Clayford.
I have
He's
no
Swedish.
idea, so I totally
Have
believe you, but I've never
Have
heard
you
it.
not heard this?
No. I will listen to it after this, I promise.
Oh my god! Yeah, I'll put it in the attic message board. Or excuse me, our private chat for in the Discord so that you can listen to it. It's so good.
I believe you.
Anytime anybody starts singing this song, that's what I think of. But yeah.
Nice.
Meantime, the end of modern society is approaching, and Matt is like, I need to find where Tuon is, and goes back to Abu Dar. And he gets there and finds out that like every third person is an assassin sent by one of Tuon's generals to kill her. So Matt gets to do what Matt does best with his luck, and he's just murking people left and right.
Uh-huh.
Then it switches to the Black Tower, where the ongoing strain of factions, where you have the growing faction that is following Mazrim Taim, and the other faction that is following Logain Ablar, has been coming to a head, and it finally does. And we get open conflict where the sides engage in actual battle, and Logain actually gets captured and is very, very close to being turned to the shadow.
Uh-huh.
But our good bard, he strums on the guitar, turns his couch up on its side to create a fantastic sound booth, and rallies the Ashaman along with an Aes Sedai ambassador, Bavara Tazanovi, and they stage a rescue attempt on Logain and disrupt him being turned to the shadow.
Yes, it is
And that's how you
successful.
find out. Yeah, that's how you find out that Mazrim Taim has been using the one power, as well as I think he even uses Murdraw to help turn male Chandlers to the shadow, using that kind of Circle of 13 esque
Yarp.
thing. It goes back to Rand hosting his meeting with all the rulers. Many of them agree with his plan, and there's others that side with Egwene to say it's a bad idea. He identifies his price, kind of going with the sea folk tradition of a bargain, that if you want me to save the world, you all have to agree to this, and it's called the Dragon's Peace, where it fully defines borders, say this is where they are, and you cannot fight. War is outlawed. Um, and as a part of this, I'm going to shatter the remaining seals in the Dark One's prison. which is where everybody loses their shit. And at an opportune time, who else but Moraine Damodred shows up and starts reciting and referencing specific parts of the prophecies of the dragon, and convinces the rulers and also Egwene to go along with the plan. And this convincing goes so far as to convince Egwene to break seals herself.
Yup.
Uh, and as the leaders all become willing to sign, Avienda kind of leading the charge for the IL, to the surprise that everyone says we need to be included. Now we know why, because Avienda has seen what happens to the IL and her offspring and generations after her, should
If
they
they
be
are not
excluded.
included.
Yeah, and she sees the IL go into absolute ruin during Towers of Midnight. During the last book. So the IL um, are brought into it as arbiters of any dispute. They'll basically preside over. There's a dispute here. We'll talk to the IL, see what they have.
I mean, since they're
And
not allowed to fight anymore, they should at least be allowed to debate.
yeah, I know, right? And then finally, he agrees. They kind of get to the point where like everyone has to be a part of this. It can't just be somebody, though. Everybody conveniently forgets about Sarah. Um, but
Who?
he agrees. Yeah, 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 Sarah. But he does agree that the Shan Chan need to sign it before it can be fully put into effect. And it's at the conclusion of this meeting that collectively the rulers there, the nations there, the White Tower, the Black Tower, everything, they all agree that Elaine should be the commander in chief of the Forces of the Light. And part of that is spurred on by the fact that she is pregnant with, at the time, we know she has,
Rand's twins.
or is it twins? Okay.
It's twins.
Yeah. So she has twins that, of course, were created by her union with the dragon reborn. She's very obviously pregnant at this point, I believe. I don't know how obvious it is, but everybody knows she's pregnant, and they're like, we need to keep you away from the front line. So they agree to put her as commander in chief of all of the forces of the light. It's a central focus, a central focal point of orchestrating the militaristic campaign that is going to be waged here very shortly.
Indeed. Fun stuff. I mean, it's a great scene when Moraine shows up to the pavilion. I don't know, it's not really a pavilion, whatever you want to call it, and just starts convincing people left and right with her just debate magics about everything. And then, of course, the fact that there are a number of people who we know as the reader have a number of other motivations, like Avienda, for example, that are just coming in strong, and you're like, wow, this is a weird scene for people who don't actually know what's going on. But it's good, it's fun. And definitely this is what kicks off the war. And if I remember correctly, other than the sort of skirmishes that have been fought prior to this, and definitely the one that is mentioned in the prologue, at this point the armies of the light actually start this war, because basically after being on the defensive for so long, like once they actually have the peace, they go at the armies of the shadow in force. That's always been a little bit of an interesting thing to me. But definitely the war and the last battle, and it's basically broken up into two parts, is something for another day, because I think there's a lot there to tackle. And definitely I think we could be here for another 4 hours if we break it up a
Oh
little.
yeah, oh yeah. There's so much more to talk about,
Yes.
and I think it would be an injustice, if not a violation of the dragon's peace, to try to rush through any part of it.
Oh, agreed.
And it being a memory of light, I think that if any book was fitting of more than one part, it is for sure a memory of light.
Agreed. So I think we are going to stop here. Definitely the month of March might just be talking about the last battle in some ways. But we definitely are hoping that Josh will join or will be able to join us for the next when we talk about the last battle and the rest of this book. We missed him today, and we hope that you did as well. But I'm sure that we'll get him on the next one or maybe the one after that. But exciting news from the Los Angeles front. I don't know if any of or I know that some of our listeners, just because they also happen to be on our Discord, got to hear that I got a new job, which is super exciting. I was actually very excited about the job that I got, and it's kicking my ass in a good way. So I do apologize for my absence on the last few episodes. I didn't want to let that just go without saying something about it. It's been rough going ahead and getting into the swing of things with leaving my old job and starting this new one. But I'm here for the long haul. So if you missed me, fear not. And if you didn't miss me, I'm so sorry. But definitely excited to talk about the rest of this at another time. And yeah, so we actually talked about a lot of stuff at the beginning of this episode, but like almost in some ways unintentionally. But
Yeah.
if you missed some of that or anything like that, if you would like to go ahead and tell us what you want to hear about the last battle, or if you are remembering something about the dragons piece that was your favorite part that we didn't touch on, please let us know. We have so many ways to get a hold of us, and you can pick your poison because we are absolutely down with any of them. There's Twitter, Black Tower Podcast, email if you don't want to go ahead and go on social media, which is blacktowerpod@gmail.com. Obviously, if you are getting our podcast hosted by Podbean, all of this is already up there and you can just click the links easily. If you're getting it from somewhere else, that's absolutely great too. Just let us know what you think, all of that good stuff. If you're not part of our Discord, please join us. It's super fun. There are some absolutely great characters over there. And yeah, we'd love to hear from you guys.
What he said.
Awesome. But as stated, we definitely want to keep this one, not 12 hours long. So we're going to stop here and move into the war next week, I believe. So definitely stay tuned for that. And we will see you all on the flip side. For everyone here at the Black Tower Podcast, Josh is here in spirit. I have been Daniel.
And I have been Andrew.
And I would love to have Andrew sign us off the rest of the way for this episode.
We've loved having you here. Can't wait to have you back in our lovely giant black tower of intimidation, welcomeness. And we will see you all next week for part 2 of our book review of A Memory of Light. Fantastic. Have a fantastic one, and we will see you all next time. Same bat time, same bat channel.